Let's start by initializing the patch by holding the down button and pressing latch. And we'll start with our oscillators. So we start with just a sawtooth. I'm going to knock it down 2 octaves and turn it into a square wave. And I'm going to add in oscillator 2. And while I'm at this, I'm going to put oscillator 2 down 2 octaves also. But when I'm adding it in, I'm actually going to turn them both way, way down. And this is because later we're going to use the filter resonance to get a bass drum sound, and I just want that to be louder than the oscillators. So I'm going to turn them both down to 19. And I'm going to detune oscillator 2. Make it nice and dark. Make it a square wave also. I'm going to add in oscillator 3 at -1 octave. And I'm going to set it to be a super saw, and I'm going to max out the shape mod. And I'm going to add some distortion. I want to encourage you to make your own sound here and find something that is just super dark and heavy, and make sure to use the distortion because that really helps with the drums later. So I want to add some filter envelope to this. I'm going to take our cutoff all the way down to 0, and I'm going to add 34 to the amount on our filter envelope. Now this one's going to stay the same for every note that is played. We're always going to trigger this the same way. So we're just going to have a nice quick decay. I'm going to go with 27, sustain 0, and I'll leave the release at 16. Now, we're also going to affect the cutoff with the auxiliary envelope. I'm just going to use auxiliary envelope number 1. So I'm going to go into this one, and I'm going to set the destination to be the cutoff. Now, the reason I'm doing both of these is because I want this one to happen every time a note is triggered, and I want this one to change along with the sequencer. So cutoff, and I'm going to set this amount to be 80. And I'm going to make the decay really long. I'm just going to max it out, and I'm going to set the sustain up to about 60. And now if I were to turn up the resonance here, it goes all the way down to the bottom. So if I turn this decay back down, I get a bass drum. And if I max it out and I turn the resonance back down, I just get a normal, our patch that we made. So we're going to use this with our sequencer, and we're going to automate those two things to create drums that happen while we're playing. So I'm just going to make the most basic sequence I can. I'm just going to record a bunch of C's. C, 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 C. Okay, because I'm actually going to play this later, and I just want it to be centered around C. So I'm going to go into track 5 now. And I'm going to set that to be the decay of our auxiliary envelope. Let's find that. Envelope 3 attack, envelope 3 decay. Okay. And now whenever I want a bass drum hit to happen, I'm just going to max this out. So I'm going to say I want a bass drum on 1. I'm going to put a bass drum on 8, and I'm going to put it on 9. And this isn't going to be enough to make the bass drum because we have to turn up the resonance. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this track. Copy 5, and then I'm going to press 6. So I just copied it to track 6. And I'm going to give it a destination. The destination is going to be resonance. So again, resonance is going to be maxed out on beats 1, 8, and 9. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. Let's add some noise in for our snare hit. So I'm going to go to track 7, and I'm going to route that to noise. And wherever I want a snare hit to happen, I'm just going to crank that up. And now this is sounding a little tight. It sounds cool, but I kind of want to loosen it up. So I'm going to turn up the release of the amp envelope here. And I'm also going to turn up the release of this auxiliary envelope. I'm going to turn up the noise a little bit more here. So I'm going to give us, before we had noise, just 0 on our standard note, but I'm going to make it really noisy and aggressive. So I'll turn it up to 26 or so. Cool. All right, so that gives us some more traditional, that gives us a sound with our drums. Now we want something that we can actually play with. So I'm going to switch the sequencer mode from normal to trigger mode. So that means every time you hit a note, every time a note is triggered, it's going to advance 1 step in the sequencer. So now I'm really in a lot of control of the tempo. And that's great, but that's a little too much control for me. I can't keep that steady of a beat like that. So I'm going to add in the arpeggiator, and I'm going to switch the octave range to 3, and I'm going to set it to down mode. And now I'll let the arpeggiator play out. Slow it down. All right. And now we can use the hold button to latch the arpeggiator. Cool. All right. So next, let's go into our modulation section and add in a little bit of like performative control with our touch strip. So what I want to map is I want to use the slider. Right now it's mapped to the cutoff by default. I'm going to set it to be, again, this decay. So when the slider goes up, the amount of decay goes down. So I'm going to set it up to plus 68. I'm going to set it to envelope auxiliary 1 decay. There it is. Okay. And I'm also going to set the slider to affect the resonance. So when the resonance is maxed out, I just want to turn up, or yeah, when the sliders max out, it maxes out the resonance. There we go. So now, we get these little stutter effects when we're about halfway. And when we turn it up all the way, we get just a bunch of bass drums. So this really gives us a lot of control over this beat that we're playing. So let's see.